Welcome to Clicks and Bricks Podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset.
If you get one shot at this, what kind of shot are you going to take?
If we forget who we are, they're going to forget who you are.
You've got an adversity story that's out of this world.
Everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer.
Today, we've got John Gilbert from J.R. Gilbert Energy, and we're going to hear his story about how he came out of retirement and decided to start his own company, helping to revolutionize the energy industry in America. How are you doing today, John?
Doing really great. Thanks, guy.
Thank you for joining us. Very much appreciate your time.
Sure.
I know you're a busy guy with a lot of stuff on your plate. Would you mind giving the audience, tell a little bit about yourself and what it is exactly that J.R. Gilbert Energy does?
Yeah, thanks, Ken. And a lot of people know me as Rusty, so you can call me either Rusty or John. Rusty is my nickname. And I'm in the energy advising business, and the energy space is a very dynamic place right now with both an oil and gas focus and a renewable focus, and then the transition from one to the other. So our advising firm actually helps companies in that space, and we also work with early startup companies that are really big into technology innovation.
Rusty, thank you so much for that introduction. And you were working in big energy before this, right? So where were you before your retirement, if you're allowed to talk about that?
Yeah. Well, I used to work for Chevron, right? And actually, I was hired right out of college quite a few years ago now. It doesn't seem like that long ago, but I hired in the Gulf Oil E&P and worked there about 5 years, including offshore California and Alaska, and then Chevron ended up merging or buying Gulf Oil. So I've had a lot of different assignments in that space, mostly upstream, which for those that might be wondering what upstream is, it's really finding and producing oil and natural gas. But a lot of them were technology-based assignments, and I ended up, my final assignments was with a tech ventures firm, where we were investing in new startup companies as well as deploying the new technology within the Chevron business units, domestic and international. Does that help?
Absolutely. So, and you retired from there and decided to start your own consulting firm. Was that part of the plan as you're heading towards retirement, or did that kind of come up? A lot of guys and women retire and they're like, gosh, I'm bored and they got to do something. So can you tell us a little about that transition from, corporate America to business owner?
Yeah, good. And, another good question. Well, like most things in life, I think you need kind of plan A and maybe plan B and C. And when you're working, as a lot of people are, right, for major company or even a small company, they're very busy. So you almost don't have time to think about, well, what am I going to do next? But I had thought about maybe setting up an advising or consulting company upon retirement, and I weighed that option, more maybe during the last year and a half, when COVID hit. Of course, everybody kind of left the office, and we were all working from home, and it became a little bit more real in terms of how would I actually be able to kind of be based out of the home, at least to start, and maintain an energy advising business. And all the indicators pointed towards yes. We had a major reorganization, and I didn't have to leave, but I elected to leave, and it was after 41 years, it was the right time.
Yeah, 41 years is a decent amount of time. I've been with my company for 20 something, so and it seems to go by in just a snap. So before we jumped on the call, and a lot of the audience knows that my main job is I operate boutique data centers, and each one of our data centers does about 1 megawatt of power. At what range of power consumption does hiring an energy consultant really start to make sense to help them reduce or transition into alternative resources? Or does it even matter? Can you start this process even at the residential level?
Yeah, I normally work more with the companies that are producing the energy and supplying the energy, rather than say the consumer. And on the energy space side, there's both small, medium, and large companies that are producing energy or looking at better ways of producing energy, and usually tied in with the technology innovators that are finding better ways of producing energy at a cheaper cost, as well as improving performance, and real important is reducing their carbon footprint. So those are the three main value drivers that our firm focuses on when we interface with these with the clients or the suppliers of energy.
Okay, so if you're innovating some new technology or revamping some old technology and you needed some consulting on, does this make sense? Is this going to work? That's when your team would come in and start helping assist with that, as either partnered with or kind of PM the project for them.
Yeah, good question, right? It could be either, but the way most of the contracts have been structured have been partnering with and non-exclusive. So I can work with a number of different firms. I don't want to be exclusive, say, to any one company,
right?
Per se. And it involves both the upstream, midstream, and downstream businesses. Upstream being, like I mentioned before, finding and producing oil, natural gas. Midstream is the transportation of those fuels. Downstream, the refining of those fuels to the consumer. And then the renewable energy space has been just as prominent as the oil and gas, with how can we produce energy and power without burning hydrocarbons, and there's a lot of good options out there, and I think there's still a lot of room for innovation. Absolutely.
So you are in the nitty gritty of energy, and this is a huge topic across the board, right? There is a finite amount of energy, right, in our universe. If you believe in those laws, I think it's an abundant amount of energy. But how do you harness that and get it to the consumer where they need it is really the challenge. What do you see the future of energy in America over the next 5, 10, maybe even 20 years, if you can go out that far?
Yeah, so I think the consumer will be experiencing this transformation. They are already right now, with oil, natural gas being it has been the foundational kind of fuel for much of the country. Some of that's starting to switch over to a base fuel of renewables. And when the consumer goes out to buy a car, they have to make choices about, well, is it going to be gasoline powered, diesel powered, maybe a hybrid, or an EV, electrical vehicle, and they have to weigh the cost and their driving habits and the maintenance that has to go in or is associated with those vehicles. That's just an example, but their homes are also heated. Many of them air conditioned, and your utility bills are reflected in a large way by what's the source of that electrical power or that natural gas. Where does that come from?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that insight into the future for energy. Normally we talk about technology on the show, but energy is without energy, we really don't have much technology outside of mechanical stuff. So it's a huge system in our world that we depend on every single day, but most people just depend on it, right? They don't consider what life would be like without it, and that's really sad. Is there any specific technology that you see coming out in the future that you're really excited about?
Yeah, well, I think what you've seen is solar has had a good run, and the prices have come down a lot, right, in the last decade for producing solar. So having solar installed in somebody's home is for the most part a reasonable thing. Right. The wind power has taken over. Of course, that's not local to somebody's home, but many of the windmills have been installed in various generally windy areas of of the country without, too far from the residential areas, because there are transmission losses and costs associated with transport of the electrons. The hydrogen space right now is actually a very active space with investment, and it's it's a big space where you can potentially produce fuel from hydrogen, and it's very environmentally friendly, with H2, either H2O or just H, and with the water, if you can separate the hydrogen from the oxygen, you've got an abundant supply of energy. It's a matter of the conversion of that energy, and then some of the safety concerns associated with hydrogen fuels. I'm not, to be honest, I'm not really too focused on that space, because a lot of it is more the bigger players right now that have a lot more money to invest in that space and to research it. But I think that's a really good space. I think one area that's been kind of completely overlooked in the renewables is wave energy. And there's been quite a few players that have tried. Some of them have been fairly successful. A lot of them have not been. We've got a startup company with a few colleagues that we're trying to get off the ground with a new wave energy design, something very simple, something practical, can be installed near shore areas along a dock or pier, and produce enough electricity for not only your home, but probably for a few homes. And some of that energy could be stored in local battery storage too. It could be scaled to subdivisions if need be.
So now I want to go way deep dive into the energy nerd world that I do enjoy as well. We don't go into this too much on the show very much. So for the last 100 years or so, AC power has been dominating the residential marketplace, right? It was the clear winner. If you read that story too much, it's going to be Edison was saying that AC or DC power is just too dangerous to be in homes. And we are seeing a transition today to where, the Tesla battery and stuff like that are in homes today. Do you see a clear winner for the future, AC versus DC, or do you think it's going to be a hybrid in the home long term?
Yeah, don't quote me on this, but I think it was Tesla that really convinced Edison that AC was the way to go, and not DC.
Oh, really?
At least that's one documentary that I watched. Yeah, and Edison eventually got convinced and probably profited a lot more than, unfortunately, Tesla did. Right?
Absolutely.
But I think the AC for the most part, is the way to go for a lot of different reasons, including safety. And it's a matter of how do you produce that AC current? And there's safety concerns with, I mentioned before, wave energy. You've got producing, electricity near water, so you know how dangerous that can be. But there's safety protocols that can be put into place that can be managed and mitigated. So we don't think that's really a big problem. I think the main issue is, how do you produce electricity for the consumer at a cost that is affordable and reliable, as well as environmentally friendly, that's not going to impact climate change.
My bet is, and I'll put just about anything on this, the same reason I named this podcast Clicks and Bricks, right? We've got brick and mortar and we've got clicks. I think we're going to have that for eternity. I think we're going to have the end game for power in the home, just like in the data center, is going to be AC and DC. There's going to be both of them. They both have benefits. And I think that we've lived in a world of too long. It didn't have to be AC or DC. It could have been both.
Right.
And the end product would have been much better than what we deal with today, right? These long extended power outages and things like that would be drastically reduced if we adopted an AC and DC power usage inside of our homes. There are some capital expenses that you have to consider and management of that system. But I think at the end of the day, people really value their lights being on and their televisions and their Netflix streaming. So I think they're willing to make that investment to make sure those lights are on all the time. John, thank you so much for your time today. Is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with before we go?
No, I just really appreciate the time to, try to get our message out about, the energy space, and it's a very dynamic space, and it's not, the oil and gas companies versus renewables. You have to wear a hat that encompasses both energy spaces, and like you mentioned a few minutes before, it's the mix of those, and it's going to be an evolutionary mix as time goes on, but we've got to make good choices. Thank you.
Absolutely. And if you're a startup in the energy world and you want to work with John, how would they get in contact with you?
Yeah, you could, my email address is rusty@jrgilbertenergy.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, and my contact information is there. I also have a website, and that's shown at the bottom of this page. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. Rusty, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. I hope we get to talk again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
If you'd like to join my text line community, the number is 314-370-2871. That's it for today. Get to work.